But, I think that it all kind of started toxic in a way.
Yeah, I was, yeah.
Um, because, thinking of me, an eighth grade girl, receiving so much social
Jeez.
media attention, um, it wasn't, all that attention wasn't always for the best reasons.
Yeah.
And people were there, I think, for the wrong reasons. Not everybody, but that's the social media game.
Yeah.
And at the time too, I started struggling with depression and body image issues. I actually spent the rest of my eighth grade year doing homeschooling because I couldn't like will myself out of bed unless to go ride.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Stable Cyclist podcast. My name is JP, and today's a special one. We got Nina Machina in the house to talk about all kinds of things, and we go pretty deep on identity today in this one. Before we get to that, I want to encourage you, if you have not had the chance to watch Mach Together yet, to go do that at some point in the future. Mach Together is the story of Gordon Wadsworth and Thomas Turner going after Kelly McGelkey's long-standing course record at the Mach 100 in the Badlands of North Dakota. It is the second film in the Mach film series that I have put out, and it has been very well received so far. So if you have not gone and checked it out, please go do so. But we're going to get Nina Machina in here in a second to talk about all things identity in cycling. Now, one more thing before we start our conversation. If you could go to wherever you're watching or listening and give us that thumbs up or that subscribe or hit the follow button if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, or give us a 5-star rating and review, please, and thank you. That would be amazing. Also, we've got a bunch of Ask JP Anything episodes coming up throughout the year. So if you ever have questions that you want to ask the show, you can do it a number of ways. You could drop us a DM on Instagram at The Stable Cyclist, or you could send us an email by emailing us thestablecyclist@gmail.com. And throughout the years, as those trickle in, we'll make sure to answer them on our Ask JP Anything episodes. Okay, enough of all that. Let's get Nina into the studio. Well, Nina Machina, welcome to the Stable Cyclist podcast. It is really good to have you here and really good to be talking with you. And we have a relationship that is in the business world, essentially. We worked together at Flow Formulas for I think about 2 years,
Hmm.
and some crossover into other areas too. And a lot of the guests that people have heard on this podcast are people that I met through you. And there's more on the docket that are also connections through you. And it's fun to finally get you here and to be able to just hear more of your story. So welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, John. I'm really excited to be here and to share some of my experiences.
Yeah. So we always kind of start things off with a zero to hero, or you've never ridden a bike to you're holding a pro license. And I think we're somewhere in the midst of all of that with your story. And so just, I want to hear kind of how you got into this, and how you very rapidly moved into some areas that we're going to talk about later. So go for it.
Yeah, so it's kind of weird because I wouldn't consider myself a pro by any means. I do race in the pro category at a lot of races, and I'm a privateer and ambassador for a lot of different brands. But for me, like the sport has always been about building connections and community, and I think that that's how I really got my name out there. It all started in New Jersey when I was growing up, and my family was always into the outdoors, and we had a local rail trail. When you think of New Jersey, you don't think of cycling or outdoor activities, but I was very lucky to have some trails in the town that I grew up in, so I quickly got into, riding out there, and I was like, Dad, like I want to take this seriously. Like, write me a training plan. And my parents always veered on the side of just do it for fun. We don't want you to burn out. This is a hobby. Don't take it too seriously. But I was always super passionate about it and wanted to push myself. So, um, so I started racing, um, and ended up looking at colleges that were in areas that I could continue training, and that's where I found Brevard College, and it kind of just skyrocketed from there.
Yeah, were you primarily into the mountain bike world at this point, or were you road cycling or graveling, or what was your like main focus at that point?
Yeah, so it was all mountain biking. I had a hardtail mountain bike that was way too big for me, 29er, and I didn't get my first drop bar bike, which was a gravel bike, until the beginning of 2020. So it was pure mountain biking. I would ride my mountain bike on the road to train as well. That's really where my heart still is.
So when I think of your story, I think of this, you kind of came, like I said, into my vision a couple years ago through Flow Formulas.
Hmm.
And the first time I got connected with you, I was like, okay, like I've heard this name before. I knew that you had like at that point like 12,000 followers on Instagram. And then like in our first conversation, you're like, yeah, I'm like a junior or a senior still in college. And I was
Yeah.
like, what is going on? So like you very quickly got involved in things a lot. How did those? I want to know how all those connections happened and why they happened while you were still in school and how you were able to kind of juggle all that.
Yeah, so this really goes back to when I was growing up in New Jersey. It all really started when my best friend in middle school helped me download and set up Instagram on my phone. I didn't get my own phone until like the end of seventh grade, which might seem really early to you and a lot of people. But at that time, for me, most of my friends and people I knew my age had phones for a good while. So this was all new to me. I remember making my first post about an XC race that I recently did at Lewis Morris State Park in New Jersey, and everything pretty much from there on was cycling related. Um, I think I made a different account for my art at some point and one for cooking, like a food page, but the cycling account was my main one, and it was kind of a way for me to just showcase what I was passionate about and what I was doing on the regular. It's a very atypical sport, mountain biking,
Yeah.
at least in New Jersey. And NICA wasn't a thing when I started up there. So when my classmates started seeing that I was cycling and mountain biking, posting about it, they were like, "Oh, like Nina's actually kind of badass. Like, she's not just like the quiet girl in class who like just rushes home and Um, so, yeah, I kind of got very passionate about cycling and posting about that mainly.
So yeah, it's one thing to be like passionate about cycling, but it's another thing to be like you were working in marketing for these companies
I
as a
was,
student.
yeah.
Yeah, and so like how did you go from like I'm hyper passionate about all this to like
Hmm.
I am going to go into the degree I'm working on, but also like I'm going to get my foot in the door with these companies and I'm going to start working.
Um, I mean, I think it was kind of interesting because I never anticipated like, okay, I want to work with companies or, be sponsored or any of that. I had really good connections at a local bike shop that was just like a mom and pop shop. Shout out to Pedal Montclair in Montclair, New Jersey. They always took really good care of me and my family and tuning up our bikes, and they're the ones that put in a good word for Pivot. But in terms of my reach on social media and kind of why Pivot was interested and different brands kind of got my eyes on me, was this one post in particular that kind of blew up. So my mom's a photographer, so she helped me get photos a lot of the time when I was still in middle school and high school. And basically, we took this picture of me half in my regular clothes and half in cycling clothes, like one picture for each. And she edited them so it was split in half. And the caption said mitad, which is Spanish for half. And I think I posted it in the afternoon or something. And when I woke up in the morning, I just remember looking at my phone, and there were thousands of different interactions and comments and followers and likes on that post. And I was just like, whoa, like what happened? So that kind of kickstarted my ability to have some sort of reach and work with brands, sort of like an influencer, and people were much more willing to work with me because I had that number of followers. And that doesn't really mean much in my eyes, but I think that at the time, this sort of cycling influencer world was just kind of starting up, and it was, it kind of just was an opportunity for brands to say like, okay, she has a platform to just showcase her stuff, and um, but I think that it all kind of started toxic in a way.
Yeah, I was, yeah.
um, because thinking of me, an eighth grade girl, receiving so much social
Jeez.
media attention, um, it wasn't, all that attention wasn't always for the best reasons,
Yeah.
and people were there, I think, for the wrong reasons. Not everybody, but that's the social media game.
Yeah.
And at the time too, I started struggling with depression and body image issues. I actually spent the rest of my eighth grade year doing homeschooling because I couldn't like will myself out of bed unless to go ride.
Yeah.
I even like got a concussion once, and I was like trying to ride the trainer. My mom was like trying to pull me off the trainer, so I was just like, yeah, I was so tunnel vision focused on that. And it was kind of just a recipe for disaster and a lot of like unhealthy patterns that took a while for me to overcome.
Yeah. I want to get back to some of the other pieces of that, but
Yeah.
specific to there's a lot there. Um, how did you work through that? You said it took a while to recognize it, and how did you work through that? Because I think people don't understand that piece of it, of what can happen when things blow up on social media, whether you want it to or not, and it can get us stuck in a rut pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, all that attention, I think, got to my head, and I was like, okay, I need to keep putting content out that
Hmm.
people interact with and like. And um, I don't even think I was so focused on the numbers at that time, but I was like, well, I'm doing something right, so I'm going to continue doing that. And even if it wasn't authentic to myself, or if I was just trying to be like a pretty face or whatever, I was like, well, this is the way to do it, and it led me to a deal with Pivot and eventually other brands as well, um, at such a young age.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, if it's working, and I can be studious and um, you know be doing all my nerdy stuff on the side, but online I'm just kind of just a pretty face. But over time, I think my mom would regularly say this, and other people in my life, that I have more to contribute. And I think that as I started getting involved more in cycling, besides just my own training and my own partnerships with brands, I realized that I wanted to be taken seriously and seen as a whole person that can contribute. Um, so it did take a while, and
Yeah.
yeah, there was a lot to it, but
Yeah. So let's park here for a little bit.
sure.
I was talking with someone last night at the premiere about like most of the guests on my show for the first year were men, with few exceptions. And that was a little bit intentional because we're trying to talk about mental health, and men just don't like to do that. But in year two, I'm trying to diversify a little more and have women on a pretty regular basis on the
Hmm.
show. And one of the things that I wanted this conversation for, but also who I was talking to last night had a very viral moment in the past year. And like when you have those viral moments, as positive as they are, like you said, there's also on the if you're a female especially, there's a lot of sludge that comes with it.
Oh yeah.
And you are kind of a social media influencer in the bike world. And what is that like to navigate on a regular basis? And how do you find balance in that of like I have sponsorship stuff I have to deal with. I have to put content out. But at the same time, like you said, like I want to be respected as a human being, and like I have a story too that's not just
Hmm.
these pictures. And then there's like the sludge piece of it of like I'm not an object here. How do you navigate all that? And how hard is it? Like because I think a lot of like for sure men just don't even think about it because we just don't get
Yeah.
objectified like that.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that, when you're in it and you're going through the process, you're not realizing it. But leading up to this interview, I wanted to reflect and take a step back, and I looked through all my past posts. Like I went on a trip down memory lane, and it was like night and day to me. And
Mm-hmm.
it was a gradual shift, but I think that, in more towards the beginning where I was trying to tailor to, this kind of like objectifying women culture. And, well, if I post a picture like this, like I'm gonna get more likes, and it's predictable.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that's how it is. And I think over time I was like, well, you know, maybe I want to post something about this or that, I know it's not going to get as many likes or interactions, but it's something that I want to share and that I feel confident about. So I think that, in the past where I was giving into that culture, now I'm kind of trying to intentionally steer away from it. And I am noticing there are less people reacting to my stories. Like I'm not getting like this wave of like heart eye emojis on like stories. And I'm like, I don't need that
Yeah.
because all the validation and confidence that I have is coming from within now. And it's coming from the people that I love and that support me. And I don't need that external validation from a bunch of strangers.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the past, I think that that kind of um, brought me up, as I think it would anybody.
Yeah. You said you were in eighth grade when that first post exploded.
Yeah, and it's funny because I looked back at the comments on that post, and it's from mostly men all over the
Mm-hmm.
world,
Mm-hmm.
and there are some comments that are like, dude, I was in eighth grade. Like, why are you commenting
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
And in the moment, I was just like, oh, people think I'm cute. And I never considered myself, I wasn't the popular girl. I was a quiet girl in class. I was never looking for attention. I was just trying to like do my thing. I was like, oh, like people are noticing me for this. So it kind of led to that spiral.
Yeah. Did you have, and like I don't mean to ask this to bring any like finger shaming to any of the adults around you at the time, but like did you have people around you who were concerned about like holy like this just blew up and this girl's in eighth grade? Because I think about like one of my daughters right now is in middle school,
Hmm.
and I think about if that happened to her, and I'm like, really, that would be a big mess, just from like a
Yeah.
developmental standpoint. Like, so did you have people around you who were cautiously coming beside you to try and help navigate this?
Well, I mean, my parents were always there for me. I
Yeah,
had such a good relationship with them since day one.
yeah,
And they're like my best friends. And my mom especially has been very vocal about um, treating myself with respect and
mm,
portraying myself in a respectful way. And she understands the algorithm and
yeah,
all of that, but
yeah,
I think both my parents always knew that I had more to contribute, that I was a straight A student, like top of my class always, and very interested in variety of different things, like from, you know, coaching to nutrition and but a lot of like sciences, chemistry. I was always super passionate about chemistry. So they're like, you have something to contribute. And even when I started college, I think that's where I really started to try to like tap into that. Um, she would call me out. She would like respond to my stories, and it'd be all these like hard eyes, and then it'd be her like, you know, why are you, doing that?
Yeah.
And I would always be kind of like, oh, that's not me. That's just online me. But online me is me, and it should
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I've been trying to portray myself as authentically as I can. But yeah, my parents have always been there for me to kind of, yeah, keep it in check.
Okay. So you're in college. I believe you went to school for marketing. Is that right?
No, no. So I did a double major in exercise science and health science.
Ah, okay.
I did not get any formal training in marketing, believe it or not.
That's incredible.
I'm
Okay.
just Gen Z.
Okay. Yeah, well, you're doing a good job at being Gen Z. Um
Thanks.
so yeah, like you are extremely busy though through
hmm
college. You're starting to coach people. Um, you're working at Flow. I believe at one point I heard you were even doing some work with Seth Alvo at Burn Peak. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And like you get all these things going on. And then it kind of like in the last year, I've watched you kind of like, I'm going to forge my own path totally.
hmm
And I think in November you were like, hey JP, I'm not with Flow anymore. We were interacting about the Mach a little bit, and um, you've got your own coaching company now in the last year, I believe.
hmm
And like, what is life? How is it? Maybe it hasn't simplified, but what does life look like now compared to like a year or two ago when you were like still in college, you're juggling all these different jobs, and you're trying to like become better at racing your bike? How has that evolved in the last 18 months?
I mean, it's always funny to me when somebody says like you're juggling so many things, like you're working so many jobs and like you've got so many things on the plate. Because I don't really feel that way. Like yes, I do work for multiple different clients and I'm coaching people and I'm starting up this team that we'll talk about later and I have my own cycling and stuff and training. Um, but I think that I've been very lucky in that I try to build my life around my passion. So everything that I've involved myself in is not just for money or because I think that it's the correct path. It's because it's something that ignites some sort of passion in me. Um, so like in college, um, my first my the first person I started working for was actually for Red Wolf Mountain Bike Tours in Brevard, and I was running their social media, and then I got connected through them to our local trail stewardship group, Pisgah Area Sorba, and I'm still working with them. I think it's been 4 years now, and that all has to do with mountain bike trails in Pisgah and the surrounding region. Um, and then I picked up Flow Formulas. I was doing marketing, social media with them. So it's always been in the realm of like the outdoor recreation industry. Um, and but yeah, so I think that a lot of things have actually changed the same in terms of like the projects and work I'm doing from 2 years ago to now. But I think that the thing that has shifted is that I'm juggling less small projects and trying to focus on, like, I really like honed in on the ones that I really enjoy and get um, most rewarded by, or feel like most personally rewarded by.
Yeah. So yeah, like let's talk about what those are. Like, what have you kind of shifted your
Yeah.
focus to, and what are you doing? Obviously, like you're racing your bike a lot, and you're
Mhm.
going to cool places, and you're you're traveling enough that now like you're a bike flights ambassador because you're flying a
Yeah.
lot. Um,
Yeah. Hmm.
and we can certainly dive into like the race part of you, but like
That's the
what is a
boring
narrowed
part.
vision? No, right. And like if you've listened to the show, you know like I don't really care about how the races go or any of that. Like
Hmm.
I'm interested in who you are as a human. And but what is like the narrowed focus for you look like?
So I'm trying to make coaching my main thing. I did not anticipate enjoying coaching as much as I do. I
Mm,
always worked better alone. I hated group work. Like talking to people, but I think I've got with the confidence I've gained in my own skin and the education I received in exercise science at Brevard College and just being a part of the cycling community and meeting so many people. I've gotten better at talking to people, and I think that I learned that I have stuff to contribute, and people are interested in learning from me. And um, so I did an internship my senior year of college. This was about a year ago, and um, coached a few people. And I was just like, I'm just gonna do this as my internship because it's easy. I was already working for the company doing their marketing. But then I was like, I really like this. And I was working with, um, especially the work I was doing with some junior athletes, I found to be very, very personally rewarding. Um, and I could see myself in a lot of the kids that I was working with too, because I feel like you know, I mean, I'm 22 right now, but I think that there's still a part of me that I can still relate to them,
yeah.
um, and it's still fresh in my mind when I was their age. So my focus now is really to get into coaching more, and especially the U23 junior side of things.
Yeah, that was my question: is how many juniors are you coaching, and specifically like what we've heard you talk about the impact of your story at those ages, and like
Hmm.
how important that is to you. Uh, what what kind of juniors are you working with? Are you working with like just local kids or kids that are trying to get to the national level, or is it a mixture of everybody?
It's a mixture of everyone. I think that my favorite people to work with are kids that I can actually ride with, and interact with in person. Um, and a lot of them kick my butt. Like I'll be like, all right, endurance ride, but I'll secretly plan that it's not an endurance ride for me. Um, but I think that having those in-person connections also is just so valuable for them because there probably aren't a lot of kids their age in their areas that are into mountain biking or cycling. And I guess at a point to the parents that they can't be coaching their own kids, and I think that it's cool to be a mentor to them and that resource. And just be a friend, like more than
Yeah.
anything, I think that juniors coaching is great and everything. But I always tell parents of junior racers that for me it's more my job to be a good mentor and to make them love the sport, and
Yeah.
stay in it. So just finding that balance of training but still having fun and being a kid, letting them
Yeah.
be a kid.
So when we're talking about just whether it's performance or whether it's about coaching, what is like the area that you would find yourself like most passionate about that maybe people wouldn't expect?
Um, I think like this is something I've come to terms with recently. And I think the reality is that there's such an overabundance of information out there in any field and in any area of interest from coaches and research and influencers and articles and all of that. And I think that it's great that we have this access to all this information. Um, but it's all telling you what you should be doing. And I think it's easy to be caught up in what works for someone else and to forget to listen to your own body and your own brain. Um, our our own brains and bodies are pretty good at telling us the signals that we need to know. So what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another. So I'm really trying to take an individualized approach with my athletes, and I think that it's so cool to see, especially junior athletes, like sending me research articles and papers like, well, you know, this like shows that like low cadence work versus high cadence work, da 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 da. And I'm like, well, like how does
Yeah.
that sort of training make you feel? Like how is that actually um, applying in the real world? Um, and same for lifting. I had a previous coach who got me into lifting more, which is great because I hadn't been doing a lot of that work. And I felt really empowered to be, working on just not just my legs and lower body, but like my upper body and my arms. And I was seeing definition. And this was like a few off seasons ago. I it was, during the off season, I was weighing a little bit more than I had in the past. And I told my coach, I was like, yeah, the number on the scale's higher than it's been, but I feel great and I feel
Yeah.
confident and I feel
Yeah.
strong and well-rounded. And my coach's response, this is my previous coach, their response was, well, for race season, ideally you should be, I don't know, 3 pounds lighter. And, this is someone that I looked up to and that I trusted. And I agreed. I was like, yeah,
Hmm.
I'm doing, Crusher and the Tusher, these climbing races. And probably is not optimal for me to have this extra muscle mass or water weight or whatever it was. But I think that comment did affect me in ways that I didn't expect it to. And it made me start doubting something that made me feel so good, which is strength training in the gym. I was like, well, maybe I should just not push it so hard. Um, and some of that like body image stuff kind of got like resurfaced.
Yeah.
So since then I started working with a new coach about a year ago, and he challenged me to start counting macros because just to make sure I was eating enough, especially protein, to support my um, in the gym work. And as a joke, I set the app to like losing weight. But it wasn't really a joke. I was like, well, this seems like too many calories. And his response was, he asked me this question. He said, are you a model or are you an athlete? And I felt so dumb. I was like, well, obviously I'm an athlete, but I think that question has really stuck with me
Yeah.
because I realize like I'm not here to like fit a mold, and it goes back to the whole social media appearance thing. Like I'm here to perform and push myself and feel good not just on the bike but like off the bike.
Yeah.
So I like to approach coaching. It might be unconventional, but in the way that supports the whole person,
Hmm.
not just them as a cyclist. And obviously everyone's goals are different, but I think for the athletes that I work with, that approach works well.
Yeah. Well, and this is why too, like every male coach needs to go read Roar by Stacy Sims or any of her stuff where basically she talks about women are not tiny men, and like the weight room is a different world, and it especially for females, it's just like the biggest performance enhancing drug and like human life enhancing drug.
Yeah.
And so I totally understand why you're like, yeah, like I feel better when I lift weights year round. So
Yeah, and run and
yeah.
go hike with my dog like so just finding a balance, and I feel like that's where I'm happiest, and when I'm happiest I'm performing the best. So you know that's that sounds like the signs of sound there.
Yeah. One thing that I wanted to talk with you about is you we are going to talk about you riding and racing a bike for a little bit here. Um, but I want to know, you are known more as this like social influencer, and I think you want to get better at racing a bike. and you have been
Hmm.
getting better at racing a bike, and that's been a really fun progression. Like I said, I've known you for about 2 years and kind of watched your progression as an athlete. How what does the pressure feel like in that of like, I don't want to be just a social media influencer. I want to be known because I'm
Hmm.
good at racing my bike. And like, do you carry that with you as you race, or are you able to just like totally shut it off and like, this is where I'm going to go escape?
Um, I think that I don't know when I made the shift, but I don't really pay attention to, of course, I love good results and to
Yeah.
perform well, but for me, it's always competing against myself. So I want to know that I put the best performance I could out there, and that I was happy doing it. And the process leading up to it, I was enjoying it. Um, so I think that with that enjoyment and just um, doing what feels good and training in the way that works best for me and with a coach that understands me and my needs is going to lead to progress. It's not something that you can force. It's something that is super gradual and takes a lot of time. And I trust the process, and as long as I'm enjoying it, I'm going to improve.
You mentioned that you love working with youth and developmental
Hmm.
kids. You have started, if I'm correct, you have started your own U23 team in the last
Hmm.
year. What Tell us about that? What led you to do it, and what is it like trying to like organize that? And what's going on with running a U23 Devo team?
Yeah, so the Devo team that I put together is through my coaching company, Mach 1 Performance, and it's called Mach 1 Development. Kind of a play on like Machina, Mach 1. Um, so it's been a fun journey, but I think that what's really made it possible is just how good of connections I have with my partners. It's not just brands like, okay, here's a discount code, here's some free products.
Sure.
Like, I want to be involved with these companies because they're brands that I believe in. And a lot of times, these brands only have a small but mighty team behind them, and they're cool people. And
Yeah.
so, over the years, getting to know people and building those relationships and already having that solid foundation to then approach them, it was, I don't know, January or February of last year, and I was like, I want I want to launch a Devo team in 2025. Like, can you help us? And I put together all these resources to present like my pitch and everything. And I started early, so it was a whole year of planning. But those solid relationships and that foundation really helped me kickstart launching this team.
How many riders do you have with you right now?
So it's only two riders, two guys, and initially I was going to start with two guys and one female rider, but I tried to onboard three different female riders and it kind of fell through every time for them, unfortunately. But I think that there's always room to grow, and I don't want to spread myself too thin in
Yeah.
the first year. So this will be just a year of like showing the brands that we're working with like their investment was worth it. And hopefully the guys on the team this year are going to have a really great time and get some good results and find a lot of joy and a lot out of it. So other people will be interested. And there's already been interest to like, hey, like, are you gonna keep going next year? Like, I'd love to be a part of it. And racing hasn't even started this year, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Where can people follow along with your race team or with you?
So, yeah, so my Instagram handle is Machina, Machina. And then my coaching account is where I'll be sharing the Mach 1 Devo happenings, and that's Mach 1 underscore performance on Instagram.
Awesome. Well, let's move into like lighter questions,
Woo!
and this is kind of it's not really lightning round, but I'm gonna ask you a bunch of dumb questions now, and
Okay.
I think you like riding your bike, and if we go out, say you and I are to go out on a really long ride, like
Hmm.
a 6 hour long bomb, and at some point we're gonna have to refuel, and we're gonna stop at a rural gas station to do this, like a redneck gas station. So can't buy fountain pop because that doesn't exist. Um, what are you getting to eat and drink at this gas station for the rest of the ride to get us home?
I mean, I don't really stop at gas stations.
That's why this is a fun question.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, Probably a Red Bull. That always is like the ultimate pick me up.
Yep.
Um, During races, I'm just like looking forward to a feed zone where like I've got someone there with a Red Bull for me. So probably that. Um, and I can't think in terms of like snacks. Maybe like Sour Patch Kids.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
that works. Where is like a destination place that you want to go ride your bike? Maybe you've been there already, or maybe it's somewhere in your head that you're like, I want to go there and like just ride my bike.
Hmm. Um, I'm really excited to go to Spain this spring for the Traca. I haven't ridden in Girona, but I've heard it's amazing, and everyone does their team camps there. So, yeah, I think that's the one.
Okay, fair. Uh, do you listen to music while you're on the bike?
I do. Yeah.
Okay. What are I'm guessing you listen in the weight room as well then?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
what are we firing up on a chill day on the bike, a hard day on the bike, and in the weight room? Or maybe it's all the same. But what are you listening to, Nina?
I mean, it is such a mix of different genres. Um, Honestly, like for I'm gonna start with like hard rides, intervals, like 30-second sprints. I'm going like dubstep, Skrillex. I'm going heavy metal, Breaking Benjamin.
Okay.
Um,
Yep.
so, and same as in the gym. For longer steady distance rides, I'll do just like mellow electronic music or really anything that comes up, some country. I know my parents aren't proud of me listening to country now, but I'm a fan. I'm a fan now. I'm converted.
It's all right.
Um, so some hip hop, yeah.
Okay.
Such a
And
mix
how
of
about
things,
how about
yeah.
just like around the house? Do you have music on?
Not usually. I listen to podcasts, though.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a typical answer. Like what you just gave for everything is like, I listen to all kinds of music when I'm working out and podcasts. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings?
Lord of the Rings.
Oh, okay. Interesting. All right.
I was never into Harry Potter.
Okay. Um, what is a race that everyone should do if they can in their life?
Hmm. The Rift. The Rift
Okay.
gravel race in Iceland. Yeah.
Why is that so unique? So that people don't think it's just a brand shout for you.
Yeah. Um, I mean, it is another planet there, and there's so much of that country that cannot be accessed via road, and I think that you get to see so much more than if you were just to go as like a tourist. Um,
Sure.
and you actually experience the elements in their rawest form. So it is such a great experience.
Okay. What is one race that you still want to go do that you haven't gotten to?
Hmm. Um, I would love to do the Cape Epic in South
Hmm.
Africa.
Yeah.
Um, any more of those epic series races.
Sweet. Well, Nina, this has been Fantastic. You survived lightning round. So,
I did it.
yeah,
And I answered
this
with the
is,
most basic answers.
no, that's
Yay.
okay. That's okay. Yeah, this has been awesome, and just getting to hear your
Yeah.
story, and I'm excited to share it. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, and I hope this message resonates with people and that helps the next generation of cyclists. And yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Nina Machina, everybody. Thanks for hanging out today on the Stable Cyclist podcast. The Stable Cyclist podcast is a every other week podcast. And we will always talk about bikes, life mentality, or when the occasion really arises, we will dive deep into mental health. And one more favor before we go today. If you have enjoyed this episode or any other episode in the library, do me a favor and share it with someone so they can hear it too, especially if it's been impactful on your life. Last but definitely not least, please, as you go throughout your day or throughout your week, remember you are loved.